19th. Call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Nicole, would you do roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Anderson. Present. Councilmember Goshen.
Here.
Councilmember Hahn.
Here.
Councilmember Myers. Here. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Popson.
Here.
Councilmember Streetman.
Here.
Councilmember Ward.
Here.
Mayor Pounds.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Next item is approval of previous meetings minutes. Our first, our regular meeting was March 15th. I've got two corrections to that. So we have a motion. Thank you. Thank you. Two items real quick to adjust on that. Nicole, item 6B,
Yes.
the motion failed 7-2. However, you need to word
Okay.
that. And then item 9 is a 6-2 vote, not a 7-2 vote.
Okay.
Any other edits, changes to any of those minutes? Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson. Aye. Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Hahn.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Oh, aye, sorry.
Councilmember Pierce.
Abstain.
Councilmember
I wasn't at the
Popson.
meeting. Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Next item is citizens' comments. Nicole, we have.
Mr. Jones, did you want to approve the minutes of the budget workshop?
I assumed I was doing them both.
Oh, I didn't, I thought you had said just one. So that's fine if they're for both. That's fine. Okay, Mr. Jones asked to speak for citizens' comments.
Hello, everybody. I'm Brett Jones, one of the owners of the Dinghy, Poppies, Smugglers, and Lucan Alleys. I am here tonight because there's going to be item brought up on the agenda about moving the compactor or earmarking some money to move the compactor. I'm in favor of it, and if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them. Perfect. I wanted to make the meeting 3 minutes longer because I saw nobody else signed up. What you got?
I know that you're in favor of moving the compactor. If instead of moving the compactor, the fence was just replaced with something that rats could run back and forth through, would that make a difference to you?
You know, I met Donnie out there today and we talked about a couple new solutions. I think as long as we earmark some money to do something, then that's probably where we need to be today and not just pick what we're going to do and put the money somewhere, I think. So if that helps answer that.
So the answer is yes, something's better than nothing.
I'm not a waster of money. I'm very conservative. So I would say if you're going to build something that you're going to tear down in a year, no, I would say fix it right all the way. But I think there's a good plan that Donnie and I came up with today that will unfold in a few months. But I think if we earmark the money today and then fix it to where it needs to be, I think we'll be all right.
Thank you.
Council, don't lead the witness.
What?
Don't do that.
Any other questions?
Your Honor, he was adversarial.
Jim, you got one?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, during citizens' comments, council members should not respond.
Okay, well, I'm sorry I asked that.
That's all right. Fred, thank you for coming tonight.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate y'all.
that. Yeah. Nicole, that was it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Next item, item 4, financial statements. You've got in your packet, financial statements through March 31st, and we'll have those on the screen, Debbie.
I always forget to look as to what's going on the screen, but so these are the March statements. We're 3/4 of the way through the city's fiscal year. I have no new significant events to talk about. It's going to be very similar to the discussion from last month. Revenues look good. Altogether, we're 87% of budget collected on the revenue side. The general fund alone is 81%. We're expecting in the forecast that we will be 3.6 million above budget when all is said and done on the revenue side. That's total of all funds. $1.2 million of that is the forecasted amount over budget for just the general fund revenues. On the expenditure side, citywide, we're at 59% of budget. And we expect to be by the end of the year, 3 million under the expense budget. And there's a couple of things we've talked about before, some big projects that we know we're moving forward. One, the biggest is drainage phase 3. That's a $2.4 million swing. Then there's the comprehensive drainage plan, construction of public dock green space at the Marina, and the FEMA private residence project is also being rebudgeted in FY23. So those are the biggest reasons why we expect to be so far under budget on the expenditure side. Digging down into general fund revenues, all key revenue streams are running ahead of the prior year to date, and we expect them all to be slightly above the budget by the end of the year. Particularly, we can mention local option sales tax. It's a good indicator of overall economic activity. We're 20% ahead of this time last year. And building permits, another key driver of city revenue, 75% over budget for the year. And you can see that we forecasted $750,000 for building permits, which is above the budget, and we've already exceeded that through March. On the general fund expense side, total expenditures are 70% of budget. The target would be 75%. We are 6% over the same time last year. All key departments are at or below budget. Any
Okay.
questions?
Yeah.
Yep.
The 300,000 that's over on the building permits, what's that indicative of? We just have way more construction than we've had in historical years, and do we know what type of construction and what's that gonna do to what's causing that volume? And is that or are we seeing that in next year too,
That's a good question.
in the budget?
The budget for FY23 kind of tries to predict what the year's going to be based on the most recent 12 months. But I believe we were a little conservative because it's hard to imagine that we could sustain this level of building activity long term. So we just try to do the best we can to estimate what we think the next year is going to bring. And, we try to be on the conservative side.
And maybe this is a question for Douglas. Do we see most of this construction, is this commercial, residential, second homes, or rental properties? Do we know that?
We don't know what a home is going to be used for, I don't think, on the front end when construction is happening as far as a single family residence. Douglas might know more about the split between residential and commercial.
Almost exclusively single-family residential projects, and Debbie's correct. We don't know until they finish and, either change.
Apply for the permits or license?
And Scott, just to give you a feel, next year, we've got budgeted 750,000 for this line item.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we'll talk quickly about cash balances. About $30 million citywide total cash. 29 million of that is at the local government investment pool that's managed by the state treasurer's office at 0.3327% interest, which sounds bad, but it is double what it was last year. So rising interest rates do have some positive results. Fund balances, you can see that the budget fund balance 6/30/22 number is 25 million, but we expect to be closer to 32 million in total fund balance. That's a $6 million swing. If you go back to the front page, around 50% of that is revenue based and another 50% is expenditure based. The cash balance at March 31st does include 1 million in unspent ARP funds that was unbudgeted, and 11.7 million is restricted for tourism related expenditures and beach preservation.
What's our timeline on having to spend the ARP?
What was it that I said?
Yeah, I think we have to have it committed by a 2024 and spent by 26.
Do we know what we're spending that on?
We're going to talk about that a little bit later tonight.
Okay, but if there are no questions so far, we'll go into tourism revenues. Muni accommodations fee, the amount received this month was right at $40,000. You can see that January and February, the heads and beds months on the right in red. January and February are our lowest months of the year. We should start to see an uptick next month. We are running 49% ahead of last year, which was not a bad year. It's the best year we had had so far. So, and 60-ish% ahead of FY19 and FY20. So accommodations revenue continues to be strong. State accommodations tax, just today I received the email that gave us the quarter for March. The tourism related piece of that payment is $168,000 compared to, you can see in the prior month, 132. So the trend of increasing over FY21 is continuing. That makes the percentage 47% over FY21 and again in the 60s over FY19 and FY20. On the county A-tax pass-through, the only thing I can say there is that we received a little adjustment from the county. It was about $6,000 and it was related to the December quarter. I just mentioned it because it's somewhat unusual. Again, we're getting county money quarterly where we used to get it biannually. And they are apparently being very precise in how they allocate the funds to us. It's 20% of the county accommodations tax generated on the Isle of
Debbie, quick question on the tax. Do we have breakdown? Last, if you year-over-year comparison, the hotel wasn't occupied in 21, right? Do we know how much of the hotel is adding to the increase that we've seen versus other normal income from A-tax?
So the A-tax data I receive is a Wild Dunes total.
Yeah.
So I can't really tell what is specific to the new hotel.
And there's no way for us to dig into that further to find out?
We could contact Wild Dunes and ask them.
I'd just like to see a true year-over-year as opposed to, we're kind of apples and oranges because we've added a whole hotel worth of A-tax.
Mhm.
And also the breakdown, whether we're actually seeing more visitors or we're seeing higher rates. Just be a good indication, I think, of what's happening on the island.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sorry. Jimmy.
I make a note of that hotel thing is kind of hard to pin down and do a year-to-year comparison because what was like 6 or 7 years ago, one of the hotels on the front beach, or two of them, went through extensive renovations and they were down. We were trying to see what the trend was. It's hard to do because they were closed for like a year. And that's a big chunk of revenue too.
But John, we'll follow up. Because they have the breakdown. They just reported to us in a lump.
I don't know that the county or the state has the breakdown.
Correct.
I think we'd have to get it from directly from
Correct.
Wild Dunes. Okay, hospitality tax, a good strong month. Collections in March were $60,000. You can see going to the left that that's significantly higher than it has been in the past. That represents food and drink consumed in February. So 85% ahead of FY21 on hospitality tax. But you'll recall that was the revenue stream that had the most significant and longest lasting impacts of COVID, because it took them, the food and bev folks, longer to recover. Beach preservation fee is a mirror of the municipal accommodations tax. Then local option sales tax. Most recent payment received is $64,000. That's for sales occurring in January. There is an additional month lag on the local option sales tax reporting from the other accommodations taxes. Again, 20% ahead of FY '21 and 26 and 36% ahead of FY '20 and FY '19. Okay, any questions on those revenue streams? Moving on to the project worksheets, Marina dock replacement. In March, we had the payment of the Salmon's dredging pay at 13, $144,000. We have approximately $429,000 left on that contract. 311 of that amount is retainage. And I know Desiree's going to talk some more about the dock project in a minute. On drainage phase 3, the only expense for the month was some Thomas and Hutton engineering and design fees. You can see the Quality Enterprises contract for Forest Trail and 30th Avenue outfalls is listed under the contracts approved, but there has been no billing received on that so far. And last schedule is legal expenses. This is FY '21 and year-to-date FY '22, sorted by the 2-year total dollars spent. Total $425,000, but a significant improvement in FY '22 over '21 as far as spending goes.
Questions, other comment? Debbie, thank you.
You're welcome.
You can come every month when you have.
Good thing.
Yeah. Item 5, capital projects update. Desiree, it's posted online and it's just got emailed to you if you want to follow either spot.
Yeah, we'll have it on the screen as well. We'll start with the Marina restaurant, a construction update. As anybody who's been over there can see, they're very, very close to being done. Finishes are complete. Last week, they were working on the floor, sanding them and refinishing them. They're currently working with electricians and the plumbers, tying all the equipment and from the kitchen and the bar to be ready for DHEC inspection. Once that DHEC inspection is done, they'll be able to articulate an actual opening date. So a lot of it is pending on that. Our building inspector, fire marshal will also be scheduled to inspect the building prior to construction. There were a couple of items, punch list items that were not completed when the city issued a conditional CO for them to continue to get the work done. So those will be revised, make sure that they're completed. And then this week, their plan is to work on some of the potholes and resurfacing the parking lot, and also constructing the dumpster pad that will be consolidated outside of their lot for just ease of servicing and to try to maximize parking in their exclusive area. So we should be, hopefully by next month, we'll all be, maybe have had lunch there or dinner. Oh, it's not up. There you go. All right, sort of up. Thank you, Amy. All right, you see some pictures there that we took when we visited the site last week. Looks great. Can't wait to have it open. Marina dock rehab project, that's enough.
Mr. Chair,
Sorry.
I brought this up at real property, but I thought it'd be worth bringing up again. I think it'd be a great idea once this is opened and Marker 116 allows us to. I think we need to have a really nice ribbon cutting ceremony, something to celebrate the opening of this. I think it's a huge moment for the marina and for the island. And then also sort of cut the ribbon on the new docks as well. So I thought it'd be nice to have a nice event.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I have mentioned to our new president of Chamber of Commerce to schedule that. So thank you.
And as of course, Rusty will furnish all the beverages.
As always.
Your lifelong tag, Rusty.
All right, next, the Marina dock rehab project, another one that's very, very close to being wrapped up. We had a walkthrough inspection for the substantial completion held last Friday. There are a couple of pending items, and I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail. So the potable water system had to be pressure tested. That pressure test that happened last week, it passed. After the pressure test, the laboratory that DHEC works with will take a sample to do a bacterial testing. They do two. The first one has been completed and it passed. The second sample was taken this morning, and those results are expected tomorrow. When the second test passes, we will submit all that documentation for DHEC, and DHEC will issue the permit for the water. The tenants, the marina operator has been using the water. Until the DHEC permit is not in place, it can't be used for drinking water, but they're using it to clean, so it's functional. But we need that permit in order for it to be open for drinking, I guess, for those who want it. The fire suppression standpipe system was tested last week as well. During that test, they found a small drip on one of the couplings at the transition from the system to the charter docks. That replacement fitting was ordered on Friday and arrived today. It's planned on being installed tomorrow. The sewer pump out system is installed and plugged in. As a result of the inspection that was held on Friday, they decided to test the section of line that's between the pump sewer system and the bulkhead. So that is being scheduled for tomorrow. That's just an extra assurance that it's working well. We've talked about some issues that we had with the electrical panels. You all may remember, they're working now. Parts had been replaced and installed, and it hasn't had any issues since then. However, we've asked them to open everything up for us to do a full inspection of the panel and determine whether an extension to the warranty is necessary or just another replacement. So that's still in the works, and that inspection is being scheduled for next week. But right now, all the electrical is working fine in all docks. Another punch list item that's pending is for Salmons to touch up a section of the code of the bulkhead that where the fire suppression lines go through. So they're going to touch that up as part of their contract. They're also going to re-pour 2 sections of sidewalk right before you transition into going to the fuel dock. The reason why that hadn't been completed is in case with the installation of the fire suppression system, something needed to be dug up. It was intentional that it wasn't completed. So that's being scheduled for to be completed with Tabby concrete sidewalk this week as well. And then just wrapping up some of this as-built warranty information, the O&M manual that's going to be handed over by Salmons and everything included in the project. They're wrapping that up as we speak as well. Third project, phase 3.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Is there a targeted opening date for the restaurant? Everybody keeps asking.
So it's what we've been told by the restaurant folks, it's contingent on the DHEC permit. We don't know when that is. Last time I heard they were looking at early May, hopefully. So, but I don't think they have a hard date yet. Okay, phase 3 drainage. We actually had a kickoff meeting today with Thomas and Hutton Quality Enterprises, our staff, and the Water and Sewer Commission. This is for the construction of the 30th and 36th Avenue outfalls. The schedule as it stands today, we don't anticipate any delays, is for site prep to begin on May 2nd. And that involves silt fencing and just flagging the work area, and actual construction will begin May 5th. The golf course portion continues to be expected to be completed by June. And we have a little bit more detail about the road closures on Waterway and those intersections to happen for 10 days for the first one, 30th and Waterway, and then 36th and Waterway will have a 5-day road closure scheduled for that first week of October 3rd to the 8th. We'll be making notifications to adjacent neighbors. We'll also be posting information online, just making sure that folks know what the detour system will be, and inform folks that it'll be a small inconvenience for a few days, but we really want to get this project done before the calendar year. So we talked about some of the delays that they were having with securing some of the material. So this is the schedule as it is now, and we continue to work with the resort, the golf course folks, and they've been great and greatly accommodating, and we're very appreciative of the collaboration there among all partners to get this project completed. 41st Avenue, two new pieces from last month. The project was put on public notice by DHEC. That will trigger then the issuance of the wetland permit, which is what we don't have. The public notice went out on April 14th and will be up for about 30 days. So after May 14th, we should be really close to getting that permit. If we don't receive, hopefully we don't receive a ton of comments from permitting agencies that we'll have to respond to. So, but that's moving along. And since last month, we held a kickoff meeting with the staff and the project manager from the office of the South Carolina Office of Resiliency. This is the agency that is fully funding the construction of the 41st Avenue asphalt project, and just working through the details of what they need to have in place to go out for bid for that project, which is scheduled for next fall. All right, next, the comprehensive drainage master plan. They have, as you all know, we hired Davis and Floyd to develop this plan. They've completed the inventory and conditions report, and they have presented it in a very simple to understand or easily to understand Google Earth format that's being reviewed by staff currently. They've also completed the modeling that has helped them identify the problem areas that need to be addressed as part of a capital projects plan that we'll have to follow for the next few years. They've met with staff to verify what they found from the modeling, make sure that sort of jives with what we see on the ground. So that work is ongoing. They continue to work on developing solutions to the issues identified, which is part of the scope of their work. They are scheduled to come to the next Public Works Committee meeting in May to just give an update, more detailed update of where we are, what are some of the areas that they've identified that we'll need to prioritize, and be available for questions. So we're excited to kind of bring that before kind of halfway from their contract today to where we should be completed. And then part of their work is also to review all of our development standards. So looking at our current policy, current code, as it relates to, again, developing and building, to identify what are some of the opportunities for the city to consider adjusting to help mitigate flooding and development and drainage management, stormwater management.
Is there, you talked about the Davis and Floyd looking on boots on the ground, you know, seeing where the flooding is. Is there a way for the community to have input in that? Like if you have a spot in your backyard or something that you think needs attention, is that something that is possible, or and
Of course, I mean,
who
I
gets
think
that phone call?
any information that helps us confirm what we know to be happening is, you know, it's helpful. There are residents that do that currently, and we're communicating with them. I mean, when something floods, we know about it. But yeah, if you know of people, and we can certainly create something a little bit more standard or more structured for folks to provide feedback once that first draft is done, where those issues are identified, it'll be publicly available. And I think that would be the opportunity for people to look and say, oh, my backyard's not included, and it should. And if we missed anything, surely that would be, I think, the appropriate time.
Yeah,
But I think
that would be
that's a
great
great
if we could have
idea.
that on the website and
Mhm.
let people
Kind of report of,
Yeah.
yeah, report of flooding area.
Yes.
Great idea. Okay. All right, and then the last one, I believe, is the underground utility conversion. So we've received the final, feasibility study and construction estimate from Dominion Energy. The estimate for the construction, very close to what we were thinking earlier, it's 65,000. The FY '23 proposed budget includes half of the construction of that cost that would be borne by the city. One question I asked of our Dominion Energy partners is, as we have seen all the time, when we go out for bid, bids come back and sometimes they're not consistent with what we were estimating. So before the city sort of executes an agreement committing to moving forward with the construction of the project, I wanted to know what flexibility we had if those bids came back and they were astronomical. And what they indicated it was that if the bids come back for the scope of the project and they are more than the 65%, they're the $65,000, that the city would not be responsible for any additional costs as long as the scope of the work's not changing. If there are any unforeseen issues, as we all know, could happen in a project like that, then that would be something that would bring forward to the city for the city to cover half of it using the non-standard service fund as well. But I think we'll have an opportunity, we'll have a kickoff meeting before we nail down a date for the construction, but they seem to be very confident, I guess, in their estimate of the construction. To say that the city, if those estimates come back or those bids come back higher, that it wouldn't be up to the city to make up the difference. As of right now, they thought that they could be ready for construction in June. And I said, no, thank you. We're going to move forward to fall and winter. Once school's back up, we see a lot of the traffic and activity on the island drop down significantly. So that'll be certainly much more convenient for everyone.
Did they think that would change the estimate?
No, I don't know. If anything, should be more simple, right? Just should be simpler.
Is it ever?
That's all I have, Mayor.
Other questions, comments? Thank you, Desiree.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
at this point, I'd like to suspend the rule of order to move item H under new business to the present. Second.
questions? Fight? Nope. Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Aye.
Councilmember Han,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Pounds. All in favor?
Thank you, Jimmy. I'm going to do this over here just because we've got slides and special graphics. And if I'm up there, I'm over there. You don't know where I am, and it all works. So just some quick, thank you, Amy and John. Just some quick commentary before we get to this. For those that don't have an agenda, item H is discussion of proposed 6-month shared parking agreement between Marina tenants. And hopefully, I know this is online. Can you all see? Not really. Council, sorry.
Excuse me, Philip, before we begin with the presentation, can you maybe give us a background of what's causing
That's
this?
where I'm going.
Okay.
Thank
that would
you.
be Great.
As a new member, you're quite helpful.
I am trying to, I'll be the straight man over here.
You're my straight guy. I like it. So real quick, Jimmy, if I stand here, can y'all not ask me questions? Is that how that works?
It's not citizens' comments.
Oh, got it. With you. So this item is, we're only discussing tonight. We're not voting. We are, trying to give time between information, material for residents, as well as council to have time to opine and feedback and suggested changes or whatever. So this is a proposed 6-month shared parking agreement between Marina tenants. Again, we're only having this discussion tonight. The vote will take place at a future council meeting. Since we just received the proposed agreement yesterday from the Marina tenants, we wanted to give council and residents time to weigh in on the proposed agreement without a vote being taken. To be clear, this proposed document was prepared and presented by the Marina tenants to staff, myself, and Rusty Streetman as chair of real property. City participated in numerous meetings trying to facilitate a collaborative discussion between the two tenants to ensure a productive relationship going forward and ahead of the pending restaurant open, to Desiree's comment earlier. As we all know, Marina issues are complicated, and we've been presented with terms agreed to by both tenants, and we want to discuss what that looks like for the city. Any change to city property requires council action, and that's why we're here tonight to talk about this. So before we get started, I would like to also make a motion that we suspend the rules of order and allow for as much discussion as is needed for this topic without the limitations of Robert's Rules of Order.
Second.
Discussion, question. Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Aye.
Councilmember Han,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. So I mean, if y'all leave this slide up as we kind of walk through, Scott, to your question, kind of what's got us here. So just level setting for council and residents, staff, myself, we have all been so close to this over the last number of months. So city executed a lease with Marker 116, and the Marker 116 is the restaurant. MJV is the rest of it, just because I'm gonna use those acronyms as we walk through. So that was in November of 2020 for the restaurant lease. This lease included the exclusive parking lot close to the restaurant in, I'm not sure what color you call this. Red. Here. So this is the restaurant. This is Intercoastal. So again, for folks that are following on live stream, the lease included the red, pinkish lot closest to the restaurant. In that lease, it also includes a section that defines the use of the shared parking, the green lot right next to the red lot, to include shared among tenants of the marina under the direction of the marina manager, free after 8 p.m., unreserved self-park, in essence, first come, first serve, and all signage subject to mutual approval between the two tenants. As a condition for the restaurant lease in November of 2020,
Sorry, Philip, one question, just for clarification for me, the newbie. Who were the parties to that agreement?
city and Marker 116.
Okay. Thank you.
Restaurant.
For the parking agreement.
Oh, no. All right. Sorry.
Okay.
I made a leap. This what I just ran through.
Yes.
Is in the restaurant lease.
So the agreement in 2020, that was the restaurant lease, or you're talking about the parking agreement between
No,
the two
I haven't
tenants?
gotten there yet.
Okay. So this
This
is
is
the
the restaurant
restaurant lease. Okay, thank you.
So as a condition for the restaurant lease, Marker 116 indicated they also needed to have exclusive control of the shared parking area that at that time was being used for employee parking. So that's the yellow all the way out. So we made that agreement. Well, here's where the agreement parties change. All right, so city does a lease with a restaurant, takes into account the red lot, and puts some parameters on the green lot. Okay. Restaurant says need more parking given the 300 slots that they have for their seating. So the yellow lot, which was used for employees back in the day for whomever there, Marker 116 then entered into a separate parking agreement with MJV, Marina side, to lease and have exclusive control over half of the shared lot, the yellow piece, and memorialize the rules for the use of the remaining shared parking, green, with the same stipulations listed above. That's in the restaurant lease. After 8's free, shared among tenants, on first come, first serve, all signage subject to approval. After executing all that, so to your point, Scott, though the agreement for the yellow lot is between Marker 116 and MJV.
So they have their own agreement.
That's correct. To take care of the yellow lot and again, the parameters of the green shared lot.
I'm following.
Yeah.
Slow but following.
That's all right. That's all right. Again, we've been really close and it's complicated because there's a lot of pieces and there's a lot of separate agreements to your exact question. So after executing all of that lease with the city and the private parking lot agreement with MJV, Marker 116 began to question their ability to operate their restaurant with the parking they had available. And again, at that point, the red lot and the yellow lot.
Why were they questioning their ability to manage the parking?
We would have to ask them that question. So the restaurant tenants began having conversations with staff and other members of council at the time. This was last year-ish, mid-year, give or take, looking for additional ways to use of the shared parking, looking for additional ways to take care of what was a potentially parking issue. So last year, Real Property Committee asked our staff, facilitating a discussion between Marina tenants to renegotiate other terms for the use of the shared parking lot at the Marina and secure as much free parking as possible for the residents of the Marina. That from the real property to our staff. That was the task that was given to our staff last year. So those meetings happened all last year, trying to get, two parties to the table and get to some type of common agreement on what is essentially the green lot in the middle of the red and yellow. So there's threatened litigation, a lot of conversations going on. Marker 116, MJV held several meetings to discuss potential new terms. When the two parties seemed to have reached a consensus earlier this year, they requested a meeting with staff, myself, and the chair of Real Property to present and discuss. The agreement agreed to by both MJV and Marker 16 included the following terms. So I'm going to walk through what is in front of us to opine on from a council
Okay,
tonight.
Before we do that, I think we just need to get on the table. In my opinion, there seems to be some discussion that the root cause of the dispute is that we are now housing and become a bit of a parking lot for Goat Island residents and for their visitors, or for other visitors that are not enjoying the services of the marina or of the restaurant. We could validate this quite easily, I think, with a little car counting exercise. We have overnight parking down there. What's happened is they have entered into an agreement, from what I understand. They're not happy with that agreement. There's a root cause for that agreement. And my understanding is we're now being asked to solve the issue that has been generated between the two tenants.
Yeah, can I walk through the?
Well, you can walk through the solution, Phil, but I just want to put on the table, I don't know why why do we need to be a party of a dispute between the two tenants?
I hear you. Let me walk through it.
You go ahead.
And
We'll
I-
get to an end result and then we can talk about alternative ways to solve
But
this.
why would we, I think we need to address why we're involved in this before we walk through a solution.
Well,
At least that's my
what I just said,
We're
was
open for
we
discussion.
were attempting to be a facilitator between two tenants that quite honestly couldn't stand in the room together.
But why are we doing that? And why are we offering up our resident parking
And the-
ideas?
the
I don't
reason-
understand this.
The reason that we're doing it is because the one tenant is using the marina for what it should not be used for. It's not in the lease. They're giving long-term overnight parking to Goat Island residents. That's not a use of the marina, and it sure as heck isn't a shared use. And we, as a city, have been unwilling or unable to tell them to cease and desist that activity. So because we cannot do that, or won't do that, or haven't done it for one reason or another, we are now looking at a situation where some in the city are asking us to give away resident parking because we couldn't fix the problem for the restaurant in order for the restaurant to open. So we're looking at this, I agree. I mean, we're looking at this
We
backwards.
are going backwards.
I mean,
We should not be a part, in my opinion, we should not be a party to a dispute that's being caused by overnight parking for people that are not using the facility, and we can validate those counts. We can help them. We can certainly help facilitate an agreement between the two.
Which is
But for
exactly
us-
what we were
Well, no,
doing.
you're asking us to be a party of the agreement.
No, I'm not asking you to do
Well,
anything,
that's
Scott.
what the proposal is, Philip.
It's not from me, Scott. This proposal came from our tenants that we wanted to have a conversation around. We've been working on it. It's coming to council tonight to opine on whatever we want it to be. Take us off the party, keep our resident parking, whatever we want the decision to be. Nobody in the city is asking you to do anything that you don't
Well,
want to do.
okay, I beg to differ, but that's
That's
fine.
fine. You can do that,
Yeah.
but that's not what anybody is asking you to do. That's not what anybody
Well,
in
we're
the city
talking
is
about having a
proposing.
vote on this next week, so somebody's asking us to vote on this.
Not tonight,
I
in
understood.
1 week.
in a week. We can do it in a month. I don't care when we vote on it. But all we're asking is this is what these two tenants has come forth with. We're bringing it to you tonight to opine on, and we'll go in whatever direction you want to
But
go.
and I think the residents need to know, this is an executed agreement by one party already. Witness an incomplete agreement.
It's only
So-
one and only one party.
I've been told it's been executed by the other 10. Sorry, Blair, let me just finish
No.
this comment real quick. So it's been executed by 2. I've been told. We don't have that executed copy. I'll give you that. Blair.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, just as a general statement, this is not typical city council business because we are a landlord. And I think we have to look at it from the standpoint that we're a landlord and we have 2 tenants. We have rights and obligations to both of those tenants, and we have to make sure that we meet those obligations to both tenants. And so for that reason, I think it's worthwhile to at least listen to what the
I'm
mayor
fine
has
with
to say and get all the information on the table to exactly what you asked for, Councilman Pierce, even if you don't have a tie on. And at that point, we can have further discussion, but let's at least get all the information out so we all understand where we are.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Phil.
Blair, you want to come over here? This would be good because I couldn't get there. So Amy and John, let's just go through. So this is the agreement. To be clear, this is the agreement the tenants have put in place for us or have put in front of us to opine on. That's all we're doing, Scott. Okay,
No, I'm,
all we're
I
doing.
just want to get all the facts on the table.
So let's
that's all.
get that next slide. So
Approve
again,
that.
you saw the schematic. What we're focused on is primarily right here. So again, the restaurant's here. Red is exclusive to the restaurant. Green is shared parking. Yellow is now part of the restaurant lease as well. This white sliver is the restaurant currently right now resident permanent parking only, where it used to be the tidal wave parking. Okay. Just giving you the lay of the land at this point. All right. So one of the first items in the proposal from the residents is that the city would retain 5 resident spots kind of wrapped around the new public dock here. 2 are ADA and 3 would be car park. Go ahead, Amy. Then we would put 11, they're proposing we would put 11 back into the shared pool, if you will, for lack of a better term. Go ahead, Amy. In exchange for those 11, residents would get 2 hours free parking anywhere in the green area, any time of day, anywhere in the green area. Restaurant would get, this gets a little technical, but it helps their flow and helps the restaurant create more spaces here along the boat ramp area. Restaurant would get these 2 spots here, which would allow for a wider turn in and to allow parking closer to the boat ramp here. So they would wind up, when the lease was signed, I think it was 35 to 40 spots, give or take. With the changes in the parking lot and giving them these 2 spots, I think we wind up with about 50 spots, rough numbers in the red area. Marina would retain these 2 spots right here. That's where the coastal expedition trailer is. So that would stay there. City's green space. We're swapping real estate, if you will, in the yellow lot with the restaurant to allow us to do the green space up here closest to the dock area. So just a real quick summary. So this was proposed as a temporary 6-month arrangement to get the restaurant open, see what type of issues we had. So some of the agreements that these tenants have come to is no overnight parking will be allowed. And again, all this has to do with the green lot, the shared lot in the middle that we were talking about. So no overnight parking allowed except for the 4 existing boat slip tenants, which are Goat Island folks, and those are verifiable. License plates would be shared. You know exactly who they are. Again, free resident parking for 2 hours in the shared lot. There would be a 50-50 split between the tenants of revenue received through the parking app that they have in place down there now. There'd be a 50-50 split between tenants of parking expenses. 8 Marina employee spots are leased back from the restaurant in the yellow area. So remember the yellow area way out here to the back. 8 of those spots would be leased back to the Marina for mostly their dock employees. In the shared lot from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. is paid parking. After 8, it's free for everybody. pass holders, there are annual boat passes that are sold by a marina manager, and they would be able to park free in the shared area from 5 a.m. to 2, and then would shift to have to pay via the text to park situation. Non-resident parking rates would increase, and again, the city would retain 5 spots, 3 typical, 2 ADA spots around the new public dock. So in conversations and prepping for tonight's meeting, to your point and Katie's point, you know, it's become apparent that that's not most likely going to work for the city, whether we're a party to this agreement, whether we're not, whether we want the 11, you know, resident spots to remain, or whatever we want to do. So what we'd like to do tonight, again, not taking any vote, that's kind of the deal that's been put on the table in front of us. So let's have conversation. Okay.
So first and foremost, those 16 spots, the residents hold dear, and they should. There was a long battle to get those spots back to the residents. I haven't been here since the beginning of the marina, but I am told that it was originally intended to be for use by the residents of Isle of Palms, and it's not. We just spent $5 million on docks down there that I can't step on. We finally got these 16 spaces, and when we got those, I actually thought, wow, that's not a lot. We need a lot more than that. Thought it was a start. I did not think it was the end. And the residents want those spots. They are the only part of that whole thing. And we only see about less than a third of the whole marina.
Yeah, Amy, go back to the lead
They are
slide.
the only spot. That white area, what used to be white, that white area is the only piece of that marina that the residents have any right to at this point. The green area used to be free parking. For as long as anybody out here can remember, it was free. Somewhere along the way, it turned into paid. It's always been shared, according to the leases, it's always been shared among the tenants. That is not to be used for one tenant to create a parking lot for people who do not reside on this island. We need to get that shared lot back to its intended purpose as being shared among the tenants. That is in every lease, shared among the tenants. If we can give that back to shared among the tenants, the restaurant will be able to use those spaces. They will not be taken up by cars parked there on a yearly basis. If we can do that, then we should be able to keep these 16 spots for the residents. There's no way that we should give up those spots.
Well, yeah, I don't,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know if you had your hand up, sorry.
As I understand it, Mr. Mayor, what you've just set forth is if we take the old Tideway parking out of the mix, we don't have a dog in that fight. It is just the two tenants making a decision amongst themselves as to how they're going to read their respective leases and how they're going to act as vis-a-vis each other.
Right, and said to Scott's point, we would not be a party to that agreement, just
Right.
like the private agreement on the yellow lot, we're not a party to. Yeah.
For me, I think that that makes a bunch of sense for us, to not be a party to any more agreements over there at this stage of the game, because we've got too many agreements floating around and too many rights and obligations floating around that nobody knows the exact answer to. I agree with Katie as well that the 16 parking places need to stay with the residents. I would certainly advocate for attaching those spaces to the old tidal wave dock. It's going to become a public dock, so that at all times is part of the residents' use. So that's my.
I concur with Councilman Blair.
Kevin, then I get Rusty.
Was he Rusty first?
No, go ahead.
Well, I just, being on real property all these years, we've been right in the middle of it, the back and forth between the two tenants, and sometimes there was no love lost. So, I commend staff and the mayor and the council and real property for trying to mediate this situation. But I've kind of landed on, they signed an agreement back in 2020. There was 2 amendments to this agreement. So
And Kevin, just real quick, again, that agreement is for the
Between
yellow
the
and
tenant.
green. Yeah, between the tenants.
between the tenants and the shared, and there's comments about shared. So they've already agreed to this. So I'm kind of like, they need to abide by this. We keep our 16 spaces. And if they want to get into another agreement to define whatever revenues or expenses, then that's between them, but they've already got one. So.
Rusty.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's gonna be a little bit redundant because I'm on real property as well. All of last year, every single meeting we had in real property committee meeting, we asked about updates on where we were with an agreement on parking. It was never made clear, never. We didn't have any kind of clear agreements that were making any real progress. I know that we had Director Carr that was in the middle of it for many months himself, trying to work through with the tenants, and it just didn't appear to happen. I personally went into this when we started looking at it, and when people started coming to the table, started having some meetings, saying, okay, we've got the 16 spots. We got what we wanted there along with the public dock. And that really, for me, we got into the beginning of it was, I felt like that was sacred ground for us, that, that would, and I think I expressed that, it's on the record somewhere, that was sacred territory, or that would be a takeaway for residents if we did anything with those 16 spots. Now, you look at it, the way it's set up now, or the way it's proposed here, you'd end up with 5 of those bags. You're talking about 11 spots, and you have 2 hours of free tenant parking in the shared area. And I don't know exactly, I can't remember exactly how many parking spots are in the green area, the shared area.
I think it's 56.
Yeah, a little less than that.
But
yeah.
2 hours free tenant parking, so it's really a pretty good trade-off if you look at it. But I know people don't understand that. They look at it as a takeaway of the 16. And I just, I just go back to, I think that having the two to come together was very difficult to even get to the point that we got to. And it's something that, again, we had no intent on voting on this tonight. We just want to discuss it, but it just, this is where it's at. And of course, we all, I think today, got a number of calls in regards to the 16 parking spots, with people thinking, well, that's all taken away now. We don't have anything down there. And that's certainly not the truth either.
So, Councilman Stream, if you don't mind.
Hang on,
No, go
Scott.
ahead.
Jimmy.
I know this was presented as just a discussion item. We weren't going to make any decisions, but I don't know about the rest of the members of council, but my phone rang off the hook. I was trying to do one tax return. Just one.
I wasn't even up here yet, and mine was
People
blowing up.
The council members, they are pretty much locked in on how they feel about this issue. And I would like to ask them to consider, let's not drag this out. Let's go ahead and make a decision.
John.
Yeah, I would just like to comment on what Councilman Streetman was saying, that the trade-off with the 2 hours was almost tit for tat, if you will, with the 16. I don't see it that way. First of all, I think 2 hour free parking, first of all, is almost impossible to manage. I don't know how you would ever manage that. And second of all, when a resident wants to use a spot there, the likelihood of that spot being open is going to be pretty slim. I don't see it. It's a bad trade-off to me, the 16 residential spots. And I just think that needs to be taken off the table, as already been mentioned. And it's and us, the city, out of it. It is an agreement that needs to be reached between the two tenants on the shared parking and what shared means. And I would like to tag along with what Councilman Ward says, and we should come to some decision around how to move forward here tonight, as opposed to kind of waiting on a council meeting.
again, what's on the agenda is a discussion item, so we really can't vote, but we can absolutely have direction out of here tonight to, you know, for staff and myself or Rusty or all 9 of us, if you want to go have a conversation. So,
Can I add one other
Sure.
comment before I finish? And I am very supportive of Councilman Hahn's recommendation, and I think Katie's as well, that we somehow tie these 16 spots to the dock so that we lock this in for residents forever. I think this is kind of sacred ground for us. I mean, we've got the public dock. We're going to talk later about how we make an investment there. The public dock without parking is kind of useless. And so I think we ought to tie the two together. I don't know what that means in terms of it's an ordinance or how that's done or what we do, but however it's done, we should look at doing that and bringing that to a council meeting.
sorry, Jen, Scott, sorry.
No, I was gonna, I guess, say similar things, what Councilmember Goshen was saying, but I guess to the question for the council, for Jimmy Ward or Councilman Ward, on bringing this to a decision, can we simply bring this to a decision if it's discussion only, item only, by not voting on it? Because the direction is that there's nothing to vote on.
Yeah.
We
that's
don't want to be a
correct.
party to this.
Yeah. Jan, sorry, Jimmy, I'll come back to
Yeah,
you.
I'd prefer not to see this. I mean, if we can give the direction that this agreement is not going to be tenable, then we just don't bring it to a vote.
We can absolutely bring it. We can absolutely give direction tonight. We cannot have a vote. Jan.
Okay. Councilman Ward, Jimmy, just because your phone was ringing off the hook, I'd recommend you get email because my email is blowing up on this. And everyone was concerned about us losing more from the Marina. Our history with the Marina is not good with negotiations and contracts and whatever. We all were given a first look at this agreement yesterday. We have not had a chance to really review it and analyze it properly. I feel like the community is trying to respond as quickly as they can, incredibly quickly, in fact. And I think we need time to allow for that process to happen. And although I would like the vote to go one way or another, certainly I have my own opinion on it. I am not ready to vote on something like this without first being able to study it and hear what the community has to say and respond to what their wishes are. Now, that being said, I do like the suggestion that Councilman Myers has made, that we attach the parking to the dock, the public dock, so that we always have parking available to the public dock. I do not like the idea of ceding any kind of use of parking that is for residents to a questionable marina manager who has always taken his side on everything and never given us any advantage in anything there yet. So that's where I'm coming from with that. With respect to the 2-hour parking that's out there, well, that's nice if you go into the restaurant because you could probably eat in 2 hours. If you're taking your boat out or kayaking, or I think at the last meeting, we talked about Coastal Expeditions having free kayak trips for us. We'll be paying for parking if we go on those because it's more than 2 hours. So everything about 2-hour parking just does not compensate for that loss of parking spaces, that's for sure.
Jimmy.
I'd like to propose 2 options tonight that we decide not to talk about this anymore. Or 2, that we put it on the agenda for the next week's council meeting as an action item. And I'd like to hear feedback from the council.
Yeah, can I just say something real quick to that before we go there? You know, what I would like to come out of this meeting tonight is direction for us to go back and give to the tenants, whatever it is. Take us off the agreement, you know, encumbering the spots with the dock. That's a city issue that we'll take care of somehow, some way. I have no idea how either, but we'll attempt to figure that out. So I think all we need to come out of here tonight with is direction on what you're not willing to accept in this agreement, and we've already had some of that conversation tonight. And, we'll go back and give that feedback and get to where you want it to be and have it for vote next Tuesday. Which is why we aren't voting tonight, to give you and residents time to have that conversation.
Sorry, Mayor, we'll have what for a vote? You said have something for a vote next week.
If it goes the way I'm hearing that you're wanting it to go, we may not have to have a vote. So, Blair.
Yeah, or it may be
Sorry.
changed and there's a vote on it, something that's changed. I'd like to add to your list, if I could, Mayor, I know that your list is short, that real property or you, administrator, one of the issues that seems to be reoccurring with this whole situation is that the parking manager is the sticking point here. And so I would suggest that we change the parking manager. And there's nothing, as I understand it, that would stop us from doing so. So I would suggest that we look at having a third party as the parking manager so that we get away from this tit for tat that's happening every time we do anything at the Marina.
Who would take that job?
Jan just raised her hand, Jimmy.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna-
I mean, so
Jan, real quick, and then Katie, I'll come to you.
I was, in addition to what Councilman Ward suggested, I would like to suggest that first of all, real property hasn't even reviewed this yet. So I'd like to send this back to real property for their review and consideration and recommendations to us.
Not doing it. Again, the driver for this was the restaurant trying to get open. We've got this all teed up, almost on the finish line. We don't need to send it back to committee. We need to go back to our tenants and give feedback that what council, I'm hearing from council tonight, get them to have their own agreement, take us out of the mix, keep the 16 spots, and that if we keep talking, we may have other things on this short list, Blair, to add to it, but that's what we need to do. The restaurant opening is imminent, and we need to do what we need to do to get there before.
Well, why can't we
So the-
open?
Hang on.
Why can't the restaurant open?
It can.
There's
Can't.
parking out there now that is usable. There may be some details that they need to work out about who's got what in the parking lot. But there's no reason why this would delay the opening of the parking of the restaurant.
Just real quick, I mean, again, backhoes and asphalt company is sitting on go. And to have the one spot where we talked about giving them the 2 spots to allow a different turn into the restaurant. I mean, that needs to get settled because that opens up about another 8 or 10 spots for the
Well,
restaurant.
that's fine.
Yes,
That doesn't affect our parking.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yes, there's parking. Yes, it can open. We're trying to do everything we can to set everybody up for success is what we're trying to do here. So that was the urgency in attempting to work around, our meeting schedule to get something in front of us. So to delay for another 30 days makes no sense. Katie?
okay, so we don't need another meeting. We don't need a vote. We don't need anything to simply enforce the lease that we have and to tell the tenant, MJV, to remove the long-term parking from the shared parking. We don't need a vote. We don't need real property. We don't need anything. And that's what the restaurant needs. That's what the city needs. Our city needs to do that. And they should have done it a very long time ago.
Second.
That needs to be done. That would be my direction.
John?
But I think we all agree the parking spots need to come out of this and it shouldn't be the city into this agreement.
Right.
The rest of the parameters, it seems like there's of the proposal seem to be between the 2 tenants. I mean, which seem to be, if I remember correctly, they're removing the overnight parking,
Correct.
right? So I think what we should do is go back and say, look, parking's off the table. The spots are off the table.
Resident spots, yeah.
Parking spots, 16 spots are off the table. This is, you two need to come to agreement. If you can agreement on these other terms and they're satisfactory to you, you two can sign it and go forward because it seems to address what the issues. And they can have their 2 hours back because they're really meaningless to me as far as residents go. And if they really felt like the 2 hours were value, then it should be an even trade-off to take the 16 spots off the table. So
Right, different.
that's what I suggest we do go forward.
One more question.
Yeah.
And that is, there are issues with the way the parking is managed now. That would be a whole separate discussion is what we're talking about. I agree
To
with that.
Katie's comment as well.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments?
One comment,
Yes, sir.
what's next?
We take this back to the tenants. Council's decisions, direction, and be done.
Well,
We keep our 16 space.
That's the proposal.
And
And then we come out of the agreement.
as John says, they can work it out on their own.
Yeah.
Right?
And then Jimmy, separately to that, kind of what's next is this conversation. Actually, I think Blair made the recommendation to join the 16 spots to the public dock. Again, that's just gonna have to be a takeaway. We'll figure out how to pull that off. So I think those are the three takeaways, Jimmy, to your question. Jan?
and are we including the recommendation that we enforce the agreement for the parking and remove overnight parking from that site?
No.
Yeah.
That's not part of it.
We're gonna have a session at city council next week, most likely an executive session to get level set once again on the leases as they stand today and what we can and can't do based on legal advice. And we'll do that next week.
So very narrow focus tonight. Right?
Yes. Other comments, thoughts, observations?
Now that we've addressed the elephant in the room, we can.
Thank you, Councilmember Ward.
Really?
As always.
Well, it was either now or later.
Yeah. Later
Yeah,
felt.
we got big grumpy.
Be grumpy? Is that what you said? Got it. All right, back to our agenda. Item 7, Nicole, you good? Sorry. Okay. Item 7A, discussion and consideration of draft 2 of the proposed fiscal 23 budget. Before we address the budget, we've got 3 items that are included in the current draft 2 of the budget, but we may have some tweaks depending on conversation tonight. So let's walk through those. The first item is consideration of recommendation from Public Works Committee to include $100,000 for the potential relocation of the city's compactor located in the small municipal lot.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Questions, comments?
Mayor, would you,
Yes, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, would you just explain that this is just a placeholder?
I will. And I know we've got, Douglas, do you want to do graphics tonight on this? Yeah, so to Jimmy, Councilmember Ward's comment, this is just like anything else in our budget. I mean, this is a placeholder. I don't know if it's going to be 5,000, 25,000, 100,000 to come up with solutions. You heard Brett say that we just had a conversation today with our Public Works Director on alternatives. So again, we're just gonna go with worst case scenario potentially is what the recommendation is from Public Works to put in our fiscal 23 budget. So Douglas or Desiree, who's gonna walk through?
I
Yes,
can
do it.
walk through. So we've been discussing this at some level at Public Works, since we got that request from Brett that he referenced during citizens comments. So what we have done is sort of lay over what the space for the compactor would need to be if it were to be relocated to the middle of the lot, which was the request. This is up to scale based on the space that we would need, the ramp that would need to be installed, that would need to accommodate vehicular, trucks, can't be just a pedestrian. Oh, currently, the compactor is in this location right here. It's kind of tucked in the corner. Here you can see the ramp is used by businesses. It also has an access from behind my favorite things that is used by some businesses and the pedestrian ramp here.
Do you mind pointing out The restaurant, the dinghy.
Yes, the dinky, I don't think you can see it. There, but it's sort of in this area right here. So directly behind the compactor.
Directly.
Directly. That's right.
Just a matter of a couple of feet.
So the request has been made to relocate it to the center of the lot in order to mitigate some of the issues that he's having with rats and smell, essentially. So we put it in the lot, sort of to scale what we would need. Half of the long area here where the compactor would be, half of it would just need to be a concrete pad for servicing. The compactor is not that long. The compactor, I guess, maybe ends at maybe 55, 60 feet, give or take. But this would have to overlay a concrete area for the servicing. So that's what you're seeing right there. At first blush, you're looking at between 6 and 10 spaces that would be lost, parking spaces. They generate about $1,200 a year based on current numbers or previous year's numbers. So that's something that we would be concerned about, doing something that would limit revenue. So what we have done since Public Works and today, we've met with Brett. We've had internal conversations about what can be done if relocation is not an option because of the potential loss of revenue from parking spaces. And we came up with some alternatives, which I know the Public Works asked us to develop and explain and maybe discuss in more detail at your next meeting. But essentially what we have and we'll be proposing as an alternative is to replace the enclosure, build a cinder block enclosure around the compactor. That should help with the cleanliness and the rats and the smell, easier to clean. We would also enter into an agreement with an exterminator for weekly servicing to address the rat population. We would also have a scheduled for deep cleaning, pressure washing, which is not being done as consistently as we would like because our public works crews, as you all know, are stretched thin and sort of manufacturing time, but we will do it through a temp agency, get somebody who's scheduled to come every Thursday when the compactor is being serviced to get it pressure washed. Another in addition to all of that, to install sort of an odor control system. There are misting systems that are installed in similar situations that help address some of the odor issues, which was something that was brought up by Brett. I don't think we need to solve what we're doing now. We're still looking at options. Our biggest concern is, again, moving it and reducing the amount of parking that we have in that lot because it is one of the few revenue generators for the city. But we certainly need to do something because the current condition is not acceptable. And, you know, the owner of the dinghy has, you know, very real concerns that I think could be mitigated in other ways. So we want to go ahead and try that. We will still need funds to do that. So the $100,000 placeholder in the budget, we support staying in the budget. It may not be used for relocation, but it would be used for additional improvements to the area.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Desiree, is this consistent with what Brett had mentioned earlier about him and Director Pitts going out there? So this is kind of mirroring what he referenced.
Yes, I asked Director Pitts to meet with Brett to kind of walk him through this at-scale drawing and some of the recommendations that we have developed and are proposing.
All right, thank you.
So we're not voting on either one of these plans. We're just putting money out there to figure out a fix.
That's right.
Sounds good.
I had a question about
I
the
like
lot. Is that the lot that we use for festivals and gatherings?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just parking.
Where the Ferris wheel was.
Yeah, I think so. So it would be loss of use for that kind of activity as well. if
That's
we moved
correct.
Into the middle of the lot. Okay, and it's the responsibility of the city to operate and maintain the compactor for the community.
Yes, ma'am. That is something, that is a service that the city has provided And it's used by 10 businesses on Front Beach.
I would hope that, going forward, any monies allocated to whatever, the solution may be that we might try, that come from hospitality tax.
And that is where it's currently placed in the
Right.
proposed budget.
Because that's exactly the people that generate that tax. That's where, that money should come from.
Yeah. Yep, good point.
Okay.
So how many other businesses? 10?
Yes, there are 10.
Heard from anybody else?
No, no,
Okay.
not yet.
Because it's, the graphic's not up. So it's, where it is now is semi-centrally located. I mean, this isn't so much further away, but I don't know if any other businesses would have concern that it's extra steps for their employees. And again, we don't even know we're moving it yet at this point, so.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nothing to do with the
Yeah.
final plan. It's just allocating the money in case we decide this.
Other questions? All right, Nicole, let's go ahead and vote on this one before we move on. And again, all you're voting on is a placeholder of $100,000 coming out of hospitality tax, solution to be determined.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item 2, consideration of recommendation from the Real Property Committee to include option C for the redevelopment of the new public dock and the T dock at the Marina. There a motion to, so we can get to a discussion?
Make a motion.
Second.
Thank you. Trustee, go ahead, Kevin.
Mr. Chair, as I requested in real property, I'd like to make an amendment to this, that we split these two items and vote on each item separately,
Each dock separately.
each doc separately.
Second.
So just a suggestion, rather than doing it in the form of an amendment to the motion, if the original amendment is withdrawn, then you can just have 2 separate motions for each component. Maybe, I think that's cleaner.
I withdraw my motion.
Withdraw the second.
Okay, and then I think now we can have a motion to discuss and approve one of the 2 docs.
And Katie, did you second or Jane?
I did. I seconded.
So do I need to pull back my amendment?
No. No, The motion on the table is to separate these two, so we'll just take the public dock first.
Okay, so we're good, and we got a second, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't even know who. I got the withdrawal and then it just went off the rails.
Kevin made the motion.
Okay, that's what the official word is now. Katie is.
Katie made the
seconded.
second.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Nicole.
And,
Go ahead.
and now.
Yeah.
I would like to make a motion, if I'm doing this right. I would like to amend the plan for the dock so that any plan includes protection and inclusion of the 16 resident parking spots as they are today, specifically the area that I have labeled as resident and circled in red on Exhibit A, which I can show to everyone. Those resident spots only should be considered as part of the public dock plan and cannot be removed, conveyed, or changed. These residential parking spots will remain free to residents of Isle of Palms and may be used by cars or golf carts. So that would,
That's a motion.
I'll take that in writing.
and I have it in writing
Thank
for
you.
you.
That'd be great.
And I
Thank you.
also have,
Well,
I don't know how this works.
It's the white area that we looked at. here.
But I did. Can I?
You can email it to me.
Can I
Yep.
give it to you later?
Absolutely.
So you don't have to read my. So if you could
Did
just
somebody second?
hand that down.
Yeah. All right, so hang on, that was it was amendment, motion.
Yes. So that, yes, so that was an amendment
Second.
or
by
motion to
Jan.
amend, sorry.
Yeah. Seconded by Jan.
Did I do that right? And this, I was totally fully anticipating that this was obviously going to happen before the discussion that we had earlier tonight. So now it's a little bit, I don't know, out of order, but that's fine.
Right.
I think that this would be something that when that property was, decided to be removed from its former use. The whole plan was that it was supposed to be a green space, parking, and a dock. It was all in one, and it was all to be, for the residents and visitors' use. And so I think it's very important that we keep that all together. And my thing is, I really want to make this dock awesome. I'm totally happy if we go with plan B or C, but if whatever we do, whatever money we spend down there, we have to connect it to keeping the parking for the residents. So that was my point for my motion. And I think, so I don't know.
Right, so
More
let's take the
discussion.
public doc first. So that's the first motion on the table to walk through the public doc and approve that at whichever option that so what's coming from real property is option C, and those that you've been involved with the workshop and conversation since then. And for anybody in the audience or watching, there were 3 options put forth for each of these docs. And option A is about 500,000, kind of refurbishing what's there to a large extent. Option B was kind of called a grand pier, much wider, much more amenities, about $1.7 million. And option C was refurbished with a new floating dock, which was about 700,000, rough numbers. So Jan, to your earlier question about what are we going to do with this American Rescue money, American Rescue Plan money? We don't have to get into the funding conversation, but I would suggest that we look at using the American Rescue money for this public dock, and that our ARP money will be about 2.2 million, give or take some numbers. We were kind of targeting that ARP money for the 41st Avenue drainage project. Through the work of staff and our grant writer, we've got that covered. We were kind of targeting that money for the Waterway Boulevard multi-use path. We've got another request in that we feel very good about on the Waterway path from a grant standpoint. We talked earlier about the timing of having this ARP money when it needs to be spent. This would coincide well because you remember from our budget workshop and ATM conversations at council last time, this will require new permits. So it's probably a next fall construction on this if we went with the grand public dock. But again, I would suggest this is how we could use our ARP money. So questions, discussion, and again, we're talking about the public dock, which option to put into the budget fiscal 23. What's in there right now is option C, since that's what came out of real property.
Yes, which was recommended by our committee.
Yep, Rusty.
Yeah, being chair of real property, we did have that discussion, and we talked about the need to make sure we really had both of these docks. And I know we're just talking about the public dock right now to be very, very up to speed docks. Basically, we put $5 million in the other docks. And it's all beautiful down there. To me, it makes no real sense to shortchange this at all. I know that option C is a good option, but I would say that for the public dock, I would rather see us go the grand way. I mean, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Do it for the residents. What you're looking at, what's been in the plan here is really state of the art with option B. And now that we have the ARP money that we could earmark for something like this, it just makes sense to do it right, in my opinion. So I've changed my mind from C to B.
You got a motion?
Yeah, do we have to make?
Do
a
we,
motion?
yeah.
Okay, I make. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
already made a motion.
hang on. We've got 2 motions on the table. Let's
Right.
just continue to have
Well,
discussion.
Right, and if I can
Yeah.
tack on, because I was on real property and voted for C also, so I feel like I need to explain myself that I agree that B is, especially with this new source of funds, I think that B is a great idea. So
Dan.
All right, and what I'm hearing is, I thought C was a good plan too, but I'm hearing that there is more than enough money in our budget for the coming year to accommodate option C on this plan with ARP money and grants for other projects that we're doing and all that. We can go ahead and do a really first-class job on the dock for our residents.
Yeah, which option are
Option
you?
B.
Option B. Yeah.
Sorry.
And again, remember what's in our budget right now is 700,000,
Right.
coming about 94, 95% from tourism money currently.
Current.
So we would just shift, if council goes there, where we would pay for it.
Okay, can we do a combination of money for it? Or all, we can use some ARP and some tourism?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's additional $1 million that we're talking about adding
Correct.
because of that. So if we're got the funds,
Yeah, I just say I support that option as well, option C.
a B.
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 Well, B,
It's
B.
confusing because it doesn't go
B.
A, B, C.
Excuse
I
me.
know.
It should.
Yeah, remember ATM came back with an A and B, and then we asked them for a C. at some
Yes.
point. So,
I have another comment if no one else wants to go before B,
Uh,
but just one thing, one thing I.
Hang on,
left out
Rusty,
was-
hang on. Jimmy, did you have comment or not?
We're voting on C, correct?
No.
B.
It's what's on the
Well,
table.
No, what C is on the table.
C's on the table. We're
Actually,
just having discussion at this
the,
point.
actually, the amendment is the first thing we're gonna vote on.
What is the amendment, please?
To lock this, to
Attach
lock
the
the parking
parking.
spots into whatever we do.
Okay.
But just,
Rusty.
yeah, but just to clarify too, if we go with option B, I mean, we have to go through the permitting process again, right? Because this changes from a commercial dock to a, what,
It's probably a fall of next year construction.
right,
Yeah.
right. So,
Best
so we
case.
can go ahead. I mean,
Sorry.
we've got it in good enough shape. People can use it. We go through the permitting process, but people will also need to realize, our residents will have to realize, it's going to take a while to get this put in place. Also.
But usable, to your point, until we
Usable
get to construction.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
But we will get to start it in time for those funds.
Yes,
We should. Yeah,
Definitely.
the permitting, as we have seen, we're looking at a 10 to 12-month process to get the new permit in place. So that would put us in a position at maybe this time next year to have permits go out for bid for construction next fall.
It's just amending the current permit we have though, right?
Well, this one is much more extensive because what's being proposed is the replacement of the pier and the expansion of that pier. So it would be much wider. And essentially, that in and of itself, it's a new component that would need to be permitted. We still had, to if we went with option A or C, which did
was
not
still-
include, we would still need to go
Yeah.
through a permit amendment for the change in use because it went from being a commercial use to, but that's more paperwork and that doesn't take as long. But this would be a full new different construction that was contemplated and would need to go through potentially the full permitting process, which would be about 10 to 12 months.
all right. So let's take care of one of these amendments right off the bat. So Nicole, just real quick, this amendment is to not
Tie-
encumber, if you will, the 16 resident parking spots, the green space with the new public dock. Is that fair?
Correct.
Figure out a way to do that. That'll be a takeaway, but that's the motion that we're going to vote on at this point. Oh, I'm sorry.
Just otherwise.
Yeah, I don't think-
Quickly before you vote, so the question on 16 is what is there today against the bulkhead and down the entire T. We have always, I think in my world at least, we've always thought there would be a green space that went along the bulkhead. We have also always thought that we would some of those spaces would become ADA spaces. So I would just urge you to not include the number 16 because I think that some of those, we've planned for some of those spaces to convert to green space, some to become ADA spaces.
And-
So I think that leaves kind of 9-ish maybe.
I-
So I would just.
Should we reword it to encumber the space
The
that are currently
space, the white-
occupied by these
Right,
parking
just
spots?
be silent on the 16.
Yeah, then that's
Perfect.
fine. And I actually thought about the ADA, but I didn't know how many it would have to be, so I didn't want
Yeah.
to mess that up.
So, Nicole,
Maybe a friendly, if you're okay, sort of a friendly amendment to just refer generally to the area that's unencumbered by any lease that it's currently
Yes,
resident
like-
parking.
And it's in in the,
You can have
Exhibit
that
public
that
you-
copy.
you've provided, yep.
Yep.
You got that, Nicole?
yes.
Well,
Glad you,
Clear as mud.
yeah.
YouTube, yes.
All right, Nicole, go ahead.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson,
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward, Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. So this first motion that was on the table is for option C for the public dock. And that has had a motion and a second. Is there discussion or an amendment maybe?
So
We're voting on option B.
No, no.
I'd like,
What's on the table
okay.
right now is option C.
I'd
Katie?
like to amend that so that we would vote on option B.
Second.
It seems to be a completely new, motion to be made.
Yes, but vote. I
So we'll
think-
vote on option C that is on the table. Thank you.
Yes,
Jimmy.
I think
Yeah,
that's the
fair.
cleaner thing to do is vote on option C and then
Fair.
do something else.
and then-
Sorry, Katie.
And then do a new motion.
And we'll do a
Oh,
new motion.
okay.
Sorry.
She needs to withdraw. and I need to
I'll
withdraw.
withdraw. or-
No, no,
No,
no.
you don't.
No.
I think you're
We're
good.
good.
But wait, if the amendment that just passed was tied to that original motion. So if that original motion for option C is defeated, then
True.
That
So then
amendment-
maybe we need to go ahead and keep this amendment to option B. Otherwise, we're going to have to redo that thing too.
Well, that's assuming a vote, which we shouldn't do. All we do is just go back and repeat what we did. We just attach the amendment if C fails to B.
that's right. That's a great option.
Let's go. Clear as mud again?
Yeah.
Guys, much voting on option D. What was that?
I think we're voting, we're voting on,
Yeah.
we're voting on.
Do you know how many
Where
times I'm gonna have to listen to this to get this right?
So we're-
I don't-
You are voting on to approve option C as amended, which is to encumber the resident parking spaces to whatever plan is approved. You're voting on that motion now. If that motion is defeated, then a new motion can be considered. And maybe that motion can include the amendment that would be defeated now.
Okay.
Just a
Got it.
suggestion.
So I basically have to vote against my own motion. Got
We
it.
all do.
Exactly.
Councilmember Anderson,
Nay.
Councilmember Goshen,
Nay.
Councilmember Myers,
No.
Councilmember Pierce.
Nay.
Councilmember Popson,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Nay.
Councilmember Ward,
We're voting for C, right?
Yeah.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds,
Nay.
motion passed, the motion fails.
So now I would like to make a motion to vote on option B and include in that motion,
You have to do that as an amendment, I'm sorry.
or, okay,
Just
and,
make the motion.
okay,
Second.
Get a second.
Okay.
Second.
Then you can amend.
John, you seconded?
Yes.
so now I can amend, and now I'd like to amend it to include the encumbrance, the inclusion of the parking with the dock.
Second.
John also second. Questions or discussion?
Price.
One,
1,703,294. As of March 10th. And again, we can, I don't know if we need to have it as part of this, is where we would fund it from at this point, or this is again a line item, Jimmy, to your earlier comment in the budget.
And it will be in FY '24, not FY '23.
That's-
Point.
Yeah.
Given the permit.
We'll have to include some funds for the engineering and the permitting that would need to take place. But the construction amount would not take place until next fall, which would take us to FY '24 fiscal year budget.
Question. Contingency included in this?
Yeah.
How much? 20%?
I believe it's a 10 to 15% contingency that's already built into that estimate.
No, given these times we're in. Everything's skyrocketed.
Well, we have another year to,
Gets more money.
well, to refine the
15%.
estimate.
Yeah, it's a 15%.
15.
Contingency. All right, let's vote on the amendment first. And this is again encumbering the unencumbered area of the marina. Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Aye.
Councilmember Myers,
aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Now, on the original motion to vote for option B of the, as amended of the public pier, which is $1,000,007, and this will be a fiscal 24 item.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So next item is consideration of recommendation of option C for the T dock at the Marina. Get a motion in a second so we can have discussion.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Again, this is an option C, which is currently $1,000,004 rough numbers on the T dock. This is refurbished, fixed pier and a new floating dock and a whole lot of other
Can I
stuff.
ask
Yes,
a
sir.
question? What would it cost? What was the estimate for just to extend the life, touch it up, refurb? And I'm wondering now, in light of what we're doing here, and I understand that the life of this T dock is still quite extensive. Maybe what we do is we spend the, go the refurb route here instead of the full on what we recommended.
Yeah, and Scott, to that question, so the three bids are fairly narrow, $1,200,000 to $1,007,000, rough numbers. Conversation with ATM to do, I think what you're asking, to do, new bumpers, new pedestals, if we decide we need pedestals, replace whatever boards we need to replace, hardware on it to get, so currently it has a 5 to 10 year life on it, to your question or to your comment. That number is roughly $200,000 to get it to a point to hope to extend the life all the way out to the 10-year number. Now, that is a rough off the cuff estimate from ATM, just in full disclosure. But based on their work that they've done to look at it when we ask them to get to these bids and come up with that number, roughly $200,000.
So could I move to make a motion or to make a motion to encumber a couple $100,000 in the budget for that particular avenue that's been recommended by ATM as opposed to one of the three options here?
Wait, the ATM's lowest recommendation was 1.2 million, right?
I think what we're talking about is maybe not one of the three options and go to the minimum
Oh, okay.
to
Do we
just,
have an estimate for that?
that's what. Phil just said.
200,000.
I mean, what Mayor said.
Yeah,
And I didn't
Scott,
realize we actually had a.
again, it's a ballpark based on their work that they've already done to get to these estimates. Scott, if I can ask, can we hold that
No,
amendment?
you go ahead.
and let-
Yep, yep,
And let's
absolutely.
vote on
Sure.
C and
Yep.
before we get into
Yep.
multi-layered cake.
And I would,
Katie?
I would just like to say, so for any of the work that we're doing out there, a lot of the expense is making it ADA compliant and putting in, having that as the restaurant and MJV is going to be using that dock. And so having that not be ADA compliant, I think was one of the big concerns that we had. And then also just having it be accessible to boats and safer and easier to.
Are we
to
on
get.
and it's a question, I don't know the answer, definitely, but are we on the hook for ADA compliance on those docks? Or is that the tenant is responsible for ADA compliance? I'm not sure that the lease,
I mean, that is, that's probably a question for the attorneys,
Yeah.
but if there was an injury out there,
we certainly don't want, yeah,
we
I
would be on the hook
understand
for that.
completely.
so-
It's just, it's who's footing the bill for
Right,
the ADA
right.
compliance. We definitely need to have it. I'm not suggesting otherwise.
So the city is responsible for any replacement or extraordinary repairs to that. We also encumbered and committed to the restaurant lease that whatever improvements or replacements that are made there that the city would pay for, just as it has to do with the other half that's leased to
For the restaurant,
MJV.
yeah.
Yes. And if those docks are going to be replaced or redone significantly, then we would have to bring it up to compliance. But the improved sort of aesthetics improvements, a $200,000 figure that would get it serviceable, extend its useful life would not trigger the need for it to be ADA compliance because you're not replacing.
Rusty and Kevin.
Okay. The problem I got was spending just a couple of $100,000 roughly on this particular dock here is a couple of, actually. One of them is when the restaurant gets open and we have place for boats to dock, it's gonna be like Shim Creek. Okay, so we're gonna have people offloading there, going back and forth from the restaurant. And to me, we're talking about redoing everything else, talking about being ADA compliant with a nice gangway. I don't know why we want to just hold this off for maybe 5 years or so and not really go ahead and make a significant investment in it and improve it to at least an option C, I would say, but the numbers are just, the numbers vary on there from 1,286,000 to 1,687,000. I know those are large numbers, but still, this work is going to have to be done at some point. It's not going to get any cheaper. And then we're going to have just one dock, this intercoastal dock here, that doesn't live up to the same standards that the other docks have.
Mhm.
So I'm voting for spending more money.
Kevin.
Well, I kind of think we need a sabbatical from spending. I've been on the dock. The dock's in good shape. There's minor repairs, whether we fix the electrical or not. I don't even know if you need electrical. You got Carolina skiffs down there. You got small center consoles. I don't know what they would need power for, but if you want power, we need power. We may have to fix the water down there. So there's not a whole lot of money to spend on that dock. The dock's in good shape. And I just think we just need to take a break. And if the public dock is at 24, let's go shoot for 25 for the T dock and just not keep spending the money. And as far as ADA compliant, I believe if, like Desiree said, if we don't do a lot of major, we're probably still grandfathered to where we don't have to do it. And if there was a situation, I think if somebody was coming to the restaurant that had a handicapped person in their boat, there's no reason why they can't drop them off at our Marina dock and get up to the gangway to get to the restaurant. So there are ways out there now to get people that are handicapped from the T dock, not using the T dock, but our other docks to get people on. I just think we need to take a little bit of break of spending.
Just have a
Jan?
question about, I know when we were discussing this at the last presentation, mobilization was brought up as a reason to do it now because we don't have, activity is going on out there now. Is there an efficiency in doing it now that we lose if we do it later or?
It's like $40,000
Okay, doesn't count.
on the current estimate, Janice. It's roughly 40,000 for mobilization. Yeah.
Well, I would much rather spend the money on the community dock than more on the, that's for sure.
John.
As far as funding goes, the ARP money, that's 2.2.
Right.
We committed 1.7 to the other, so it leaves roughly what, $400,000-$500,000.
This is a private enterprise.
I don't know, can it be used for the same, for the stock?
Yeah. I mean, it's loosely defined as infrastructure in the
Yeah.
ARP guidelines.
Right.
But is
So-
it for private use or public use? I mean, how would it be
It's
defined?
not, it doesn't have that specificity to it.
So theoretically, to use the entire funding, you'd have about $400,000 or $500,000 that you could put into this stock to upgrade it of that money. We can decide how to spend that best with the consultants or the contractor as an option.
I mean, I understand the fact that we are spending a lot of money, but from what I recall, there's some things that with that dock that need to be addressed sooner rather than later. I mean, I feel like a lot of it was like a 5-year span that we had left useful life, and 200,000 is a lot less, but it's still 200,000 that we're going to spend, and then a couple years later tear it all up and start over. I just feel like we'd be better off to go with on this one go with the middle, option C, get it all good, ready to go out there, everything nice, deal with, have it so that people can access the restaurant from the water, I mean, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to dock a boat on those, with those concrete things. It's awful. And so I would really like for us to get rid of those. But I feel like once you get, when you go to option A, you've spent so much money that you might as well go farther. And the middle ground one also takes less time because they're gonna completely replace the floating dock. So the new floating dock will be better accessible for the things that they need to attach to it. So it actually takes less time to build. So I would strongly urge that we go with C.
Other comments, thoughts? Nicole,
So we're voting on.
we're voting on the recommendation from real property for option C,
Price.
1.4. And again, sorry, this is currently in the budget at 1.4, about 92-94% tourism money currently. We can decide how we want to pay if it gets there. Nicole, sorry.
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Nay.
Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce,
Nay.
Councilmember Popson,
Nay.
Councilmember Streetman,
Aye.
Councilmember Ward,
Nay.
Mayor Pounds.
Nay.
Tied. Motion fails. I just have to count. Yep.
Oh,
Motion
yeah,
fails.
that's right. I forgot.
Tie.
We're back to 8.
We
Is
had
there,
9 for like an hour.
yeah, is there another
Proxy.
conversation you want to have on the T-Doc?
I don't think we can do that.
Right.
We've had a vote,
Yeah.
business is concluded on this.
On option C, that's correct. Just like we did on the first, if somebody wants to make another option proposal for T-Doc, then we can go down that path.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we get an estimate from the contractor to get the dock into usable, or the obvious, I don't know the way to word this, but the obvious current deficiencies of the dock up to current standards with a budget of up to $400,000.
Second.
You can
Jimmy.
wordsmith that a lot, but
Jimmy, go ahead.
Director,
Yep.
what's the useful life on the books at the T-Dot?
10 years.
And how far has it been depreciated? You know?
I do not know off the top of my head how many years of depreciation's been made on it, but I think Kirby estimated what the remaining useful life on it was.
5 to 10 years.
I
Yeah,
would
certain
trust
parts were 5.
Yeah, I think that, so based on that limited conditions assessment that ATM presented, I believe last month, the most pressing issues is the hardware associated with the pier. When him and I talked about, what's the minimal that could be done, should that be an option that y'all want to consider? He said that with $175,000 to $200,000, you could get all that replaced. You could get similar work to the work that we've already done on the restaurant side, replacing the bumpers, the floaters underneath it, fix the electrical, fix the pedestals, and maybe replace some siding. No, it's not siding. No, the wood. Decking, replacing some decking. So the $200,000 in his mind, he indicated that would significantly improve the useful life of that T-Dock.
So the auditors at the last financial report, if I remember, there was no journal entries. There were no journal entries presented, which is a good thing, correct?
Mhm.
So obviously they did an examination of fixed assets and accumulated depreciation. And current depreciation, and they didn't find anything that they would recommend changing. So I'd be very interested in seeing what the book value of that dock is. Okay, since there was no geometries. Put forward by the auditors.
Nicole,
I'm sorry. Just trying to,
What are we voting on?
we're voting on Councilmember Goshen's motion to have a contractor estimate what it's going to take to get it.
Make repairs?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that it, or was that your motion?
Or was it to see what we can get for up to 400 grand?
Yeah, I would say the limit though, up to $400,000.
So a placeholder in FY '23 of up to, no, not to exceed 400,000 for repairs
Yeah.
and refurbishment.
Yes,
But if the estimate is 200,000,
then we spend 200.
yeah. I mean, it's no different than the $100,000 conversation we had earlier on the compactor. It may be a $5,000 item or 50. I mean, who knows? But we'll have a placeholder. Nicole,
Councilmember Anderson,
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen,
Aye.
Councilmember Han, I'm sorry, Councilmember Myers,
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Last item for budget fiscal 23, consideration of recommendation from Public Safety Committee to include the following capital outlay request. First is an exhaust system for both fire stations, $200,000.
Motion to approve. Second.
I'd just like to say that this is just going to make it much safer and healthier to be inside those bays when the trucks are idling.
the chief gave a,
As we all call.
he gave a great presentation at public safety. So
The chief did.
the chief did.
Chief, you want to do that again? No. Nicole,
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
thank you. Item B, refurbishment of gym equipment in both stations, $75,000 shared between police department and fire department.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
Just that the equipment is old and needs to be looked after. So that's just nothing fancy.
Does the fire department
Work out?
still hire a personal trainer? It came up years ago.
I think it's been years that that has happened.
All right.
This is for the equipment.
You applying for the job?
Yeah, I was going to
Are you
say.
applying for the job?
Sorry, he blanched. Made eye contact.
Been through years ago.
Nicole,
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
thank you. So those were the three budget items for fiscal 23. So we need to back up to discussion and consideration of draft 2 of proposed fiscal 23 budget, which you've had in your possession for a little while. So if I can have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Anything you want to add here? Questions, other questions, comments? Nicole,
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Next item B, consideration of approval of sole source purchase of Purvis Station alerting system for Fire Station 1 and 2 in the amount not to exceed $75,000. And you can see where that's budgeted, and this is a fiscal 22 item.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Questions, discussion?
Just it's a sole source because they're the only ones that make it.
That's right, and I've included a sole source justification in the packet. We can have the chief sort of speak to the system, but yes, the sole source, we're required to include that in on the record. And it would put the city in the same position as the county and other neighboring communities that we have mutual aid with. So that's why the request being made. And we have funds in our current budget to make this happen. So fully recommended by myself.
Nicole,
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
aye.
All in favor?
Item C, discussion of recommendation From Recreation Committee that the city plan a celebration to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the city's incorporation instead of the 70th anniversary next year.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Kevin, anything you want to, from the rec committee here? Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson.
aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Han, excuse me, Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item D, discussion and consideration of request for ATAX funding from MUSC Hollings Cancer Center for the Lavello Bike Ride and IOP on November 5th, 2022. Again, this is a fiscal 22 item. You can see where that's coming from, state ATAX money. And the request is $10,000, sorry,
Motion to approve.
It's not 85.
not 85, sorry, typo.
85 is
10.
is what's on in the budget to account for these
Yeah.
type of requests.
This particular
It's
request is
10,
for
okay.
10.
Thank you. Wonderful.
So did you get that? Nicole, Rusty motioned.
Okay.
Who
Second.
And John seconded.
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Item E, consideration of recommendation from the Public Works Committee to approve an amount not to exceed $25,000 for intersection improvements on Ocean Boulevard and J.C. Long Boulevard to improve traffic flow. Again, this is a fiscal 22 item, and you can see where that's coming from, state ATAC.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
We've had this conversation for, gosh, at least a year and a half or more. Yeah. So, Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item F, consideration of recommendation from the Public Works Committee to approve an amount not to exceed $12,000 for pavement repairs at Palm and 45th. Again, a fiscal 22 item, and you can see where that's coming from.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second,
Thank you. This is an area where we had drainage work done 3-4 years ago, maybe, and it's
Yeah, four out in the fourth.
four,
Yeah,
and it's
4.
starting to sinkhole again. Katie?
Is this our responsibility?
It is because that is our pipe that's going under the road. So the city asked DOT for permission to be able to install the pipe under the road. And it's our project. And we have an encroachment permit from SCDOT allowing us to do that.
Gotcha.
May not be an answer you like, but it's an answer.
Shucks.
Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson.
aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Thank you. Item G, consideration of recommendation from the Public Works Committee to approve an amount not to exceed $76,000 for drainage, flooding mitigation improvements at the end of 25th Avenue. Again, a fiscal 22 item.
Motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second,
So again, just real quick background. This is mostly a DOT expense item. Their piece, if I'm right, is about 250,000, give or take. Our piece is this 76,000 for the flapper valve that go at the end of 25th. And if you've been on 25th Avenue at a king tide, those people cannot even get into their houses. It's bad. This is work well needed. So staff, along with DOT, have been working on this for a number of months.
Years.
Yeah, it's been a problem. for
Yeah,
years.
I was being kind. Months are still years. You know.
That's right.
So not just the flapper gates, but cleaning out the ditches and the pipe under some of those areas are okay, or?
I'll have, there's a little bit more detail to that. I'll ask Douglas to spell out. He's been directly communicating, working with Thomas and Hutton and DOT, because we did hire Thomas and Hutton for a small amount to help us negotiate and coordinate and identify what would be needed. So Douglas, why don't
Yeah,
you?
so what's happening there at abnormally high tides is the water is coming up over, there's a guardrail at the end, it comes over the guardrail all the way up the road, gets pretty close to pretty close to Waterway Boulevard on a really high tide. That water crests in and then it can't get back out. So it's, at some parts it's knee to thigh high. So we be very hard to get any kind of response down there if they had to get out of their house. So they really are landlocked during these high tide events. Then the tide goes out and it has crested into lower areas and the water can't get out. So it leaves water for an extended period after the high tides. So what the work would be a earthen wall. There's basically the road itself is low, so there would be a new wall that would go shore parallel to the shoreline that would hold the high tides back. And then there would be a series of 3 new large pipes that would outfall through the wall. And those are 3-foot, they're very big pipes, expensive pipes. And then at the end of those pipes, there would be backflow preventer valves. So in a normal high tide, the water would come up. It would not crest over that new wall, keep the water out. At a normal rain event, the tides would let the rainwater escape and not let the tide water come back. It's a long, drawn out history, and I can go into any detail that you want, but that's the gist of what's going on down there.
So is the ditch working at all?
No, the ditch on one side does work, but of course it also, part of the problem is it freely allows the tide water to come back in. On the other side, the side where it catches, that ditch is not working at all, either to let the water in or let the water out. So that is part of it, is adding a drainage system on the other side of the road.
So what you have in front of you is just approving the actual flapper valve that would be bought and installed in the pipes and the wall that will go through the wall that DOT will construct. Do we have a timing?
So they actually started clearing last week.
Mhm.
We think and hope, they're kind of sporadic, so they're hard to rely on, but we think that they're going to do their end of the work within, say, the next 30 days. We don't know that. Thomas and Hutton is reaching out to them now to figure that out, but we believe it's going to happen very quickly. They're part of the work. So, we would be adding these valves after the fact. We need to get them and order them and all that. So for a while there, we wouldn't have valves.
Is there a lead time on the valves?
There is not currently. We're checking into that. We're also looking if we had to return them because SCDOT doesn't show up. But no, right now there is no lead time. They're unusually long. They're 48. 2 of them are 48-inch valves, so huge. That's why there's only 3 valves, 75,000. They're just big and expensive.
And we're getting them straight from the manufacturer. So that's another sole source purchase.
And Douglas, we're approving this tonight, hoping and assuming it'll be a fiscal 22
That's correct.
budget item. If we find out something different, we'll need to shift it.
Yeah, that's our hope, is we would have this in
Yeah.
and done before the end of the fiscal year.
Good. Thank you all for pushing DOT to get us to this point. Nicole?
Councilmember Anderson.
Aye.
Councilmember Goshen.
Aye.
Councilmember Myers.
Aye.
Councilmember Pierce.
Aye.
Councilmember Popson.
Aye.
Councilmember Streetman.
Aye.
Councilmember Ward.
Aye.
Mayor Pounds.
Aye.
All in favor?
Miscellaneous business, next meeting is 5 p.m. Tuesday, May 17th. No executive session needed.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You didn't want to discuss H again?
All for line 708.